Glen here, founder of SJI Sing Jazz International, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our today's chat when we talk about inspiration of learning jazz, of singing jazz, of producing jazz, producing albums, and becoming the best version of ourselves. Hello, everyone.
Hello, glad to be here.
So good to have you.
Hi, everyone. I'm an Israeli jazz singer based in New York. I moved here at the end of 2004, first studying at City College with the great Sheila Jordan, and then just worked my way in the scene, have some albums out. The recent one was released in 2021, a tribute to Irving Berlin, and love teaching, love sharing, so really happy to be here.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm also an Israeli jazz singer. I moved here to New York around 7.5 years ago. One of my first teachers happened to actually be Yala, who we just heard from. I live and work in New York. I'm currently releasing music from a new album of mine that is called Where Flamingos Fly. And yeah, I'm doing it as well.
No, you're brilliant, no, girls. Thank you so much.
So I've been, I started out playing drums when I was really young because I was beating on tables and doing stuff, and played through high school, and that was, what, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And then over the last years, I started playing vibraphone. And I started falling in love with harmonies and melodies, and then I did that, and just I'm in the next month I'm retiring, and so I'm going to be on my next stage, and I've always heard music in my head, and what I wanted to do is see if I had the tools and the capability to sing, or at least sing well enough that people want to listen. And so that's where this journey is that I spent my life being an amateur musician. I got paid on rare occasions, and now I just want to step into my next bit of musicianship and see what I can do and see where I can take this.
Amazing. Sounds good. Thank you so much for lovely and beautiful introductions, everyone.
I already see Argentina is on, and some people from Israel.
Amazing. It's wonderful. So my first question goes to Yala. What is your main inspiration and drive for producing such an amazing, elaborate, and grandiose album?
A lot of our inspiration comes from constantly listening to music. So whatever stage we're in, no matter how famous or established you are, I constantly listen to music. I listen to jazz, I listen to other music I love, I listen to classical music, and it inspires me because I start thinking about lyrics, I start thinking about sounds, I start thinking about all these different elements that I can do with my own singing. The other thing I'll say is that living in New York allowed me to be inspired by other musicians that I went to hear live, right? You go hear people, that's the second thing I would say. Go hearing live music and see and hear how people do what they do and get inspired from that. And that got me to know so many people, also worldwide, because like here we are living in New York from Israel, there are people from Italy, there are people from Germany, there are people from Cyprus. And I think that's the main thing I would say, is that constantly listening to music would be a major thing I would start with. I'm kind of a producer, just in my own personality. I like thinking of different opportunities and different collaborations, and so my head is constantly thinking of different themes, like the Irving Berlin thing I did. I think inspiration-wise, it always brings me back to Billie Holiday, which is also the inspiration for this project, Symphony Song Swing, mostly because she was one of my first jazz singers I ever listened to, and I always go back to her in terms of emotion and interpretation of songs. So if I had to choose one main inspiration behind the scenes,
all right,
that's
thank you so much. And your production and orchestration of your last album is so authentic looking. Did you get inspiration from earlier work of somebody? Did you see a movie that inspires you or created that spark?
When I decided to do Symphony Song Swing, which is an album or a concert of my jazz trio with a chamber ensemble. It was again inspired by Billie Holiday's last album, Lady in Satin, but then I figured we need to bring it up to date. It has to be original music. And this is where the collaborations with different people in New York came about. And that's my musical team, right? I called the people that I love, the way they arrange. And I brought them on board. I commissioned them to be part of this project. And it's happening.
Amazing. Well, so inspirational just to hear somebody like yourself saying that, you know, it's possible.
Thank you. I would say every time you have an idea, and I'm sure the guys will agree with me, every time you have an idea, you have to share it. You have to talk about it. You have to let people know it's out there and help people put it together.
Yeah, definitely. Please tell us about your inspiration and drive behind the material and repertoire that you're going for.
The story for me is the first thing that comes to mind when I choose the songs that I end up recording or performing. The reason I do what I do is because I love to feel whatever it is that the song is making me feel. And in order to have that and to have the power to make other people feel what I feel and what I want to deliver, I need to really like what the song is talking about. I have been really lucky to have this kind of long residency at a jazz club here in New York called Mesro. Like on a monthly basis. I've been doing it for years now, and it's a listening room, so I always need to think about what I'm bringing to that show. It's a show that people listen very intently to and stuff like that. So it's forced me to like really dig deep into the American Songbook or just a lot of records that I've been listening to, and I like to find the songs that maybe are not as known but have a beautiful story to them, and then seeing how I feel when I perform them and how the audience reacts. I decide whether it's something I feel like I should, take on to the recording studio and have it, live in the whatever universe forever, or maybe sometimes I'm like, no, you know what, that doesn't work, or I feel really uncomfortable with this. I can't find a connection, so I'll move on. So I would say that is a big one. And just to connect to what Yala said, there is so much music happening in the city. So it's sometimes you discover new songs that you've never heard just by hearing people, do them at shows.
This is why we do this. What we do this for inspiration. But then again, everybody has got their own inspiration, and it's like you said, it's so good to talk about it and so good to talk about ideas. Because if you don't, then nobody knows. So it brings me next to Glen. Glen, my question to you goes: what inspires you to learn jazz vocals after learning all these musical, instruments that you're playing? Tell us.
Yeah, what really inspired me is just opening my ears. And for a long time, I didn't focus on the lyrics. I just heard melodies. I heard things. And I think all of us that do this, two things is, one is you hear music in your head and it has to come out somehow. And the other part is that I think that we all like to tell stories. And I've always wanted to be in the place that I can tell a story where somebody can forget their problems, or that they can look at things in a different way. And so inspiration for me, because there's two sides. As an instrumentalist, it could be just tapping or hearing two different pot lids when they hit on the floor with an interval and how that works. On the other side is the further out is reading a piece of poetry, or I think all of us have you're driving down the freeway or walking down the sidewalk, and you hear something, or you're even emotionally feeling something at the time that's more lyrically based. And then in order to merge them, it's a really, really powerful thing. And really what inspired me was I heard that stuff, and as a musician, it's how do I develop this instrument that's a voice? Because we all sing with the radio, but how do we attack it, for me as a scientist, more scientifically, and finding out the correct things and the way to go. So I think, for all of us that we talked about it's having open ears and an open mind and hearing where that stuff is. And the really wonderful thing is, to me is inspirational, is when you have something that you find out a connection between a couple things. And if I don't feel like practicing, I either put on Ella Fitzgerald, or I put on and I listen to Mel Torme for a minute, or on the vibraphone side, Milt Jackson. And either one of those, if I listen to them for 5 minutes and I want to get in to do that, just for the inspiration.
Amazing.
So, you know, coming from really an instrumentalist, I try to look at it as tones and intervals, but what uniquely can a voice bring to this part of the creativity part.
Interesting, because what you're talking about is the connection that not many people can actually develop in themselves. I mean, there are lots of people who do feel that the music is powerful, but they can't really pinpoint what exactly the music kind of brings out in them.
And not everybody needs to make those heavy connections, but it really is fun.
But
and
it's good to actually remind ourselves sometimes that this magic sometimes that comes to us, so like you say, on the radio or freely, you know, it's available. We're so blessed that we sometimes don't appreciate it because it's just there like air. But we should really pay attention to how important it is and maybe dig into it a little bit deeper to actually learn about what it does to you. It's therapeutical, right? Like you say, and also it's important, like you say, to release. If you don't release it, it's stuck in you, and then you feel, you know, anxiety and you feel depressed. And so that's such a great, brilliant point. Thank you so much, Glenn. I love you.
I wanted to add to.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, one of the things real quick that you inspired is that we worked on simple tune Blue Skies, and it kept bugging me because I'd heard it before, and then I found out that Thelonious Monk wrote In Walked Bud as a contrafact to use those same chords for Blue Skies as a tribute to Bud Powell. So those are the kind of connections that, you know, it just opens up to see. Okay, go ahead.
Amazing.
I wanted to add to what he said in general to us as singers and performers, and talking about telling stories. I think we should not underestimate the power of learning songs. I mean, I always say that, first of all, no matter how much you work on your improvisational skills and you learn piano and guitar and you do this and that, at the end of the day, if I call you for a 3-hour gig or 4-hour gig nowadays in New York, do you know 40, 50 songs to do the actual gig, right? So I believe that the more songs we learn, like each song is going to teach us a lot.
Yeah.
And each song on itself is going to inspire us. As you said, you learn one song and then you make a historical connection, or you make a connection to another artist. But even just as performers, as storytellers, right? It's not only necessary that we know songs so we can work, but also I think the songs themselves starts to inspire us the more we learn them. And we go in and out of them. One period we learn very common songs that everybody sings, and one period we go and do obscure songs that only, you know, Etta Jones did. You know, it like comes and goes in periods, and that's wonderful. We have to embrace those periods and enjoy each one of them.
Amazing. Yeah, I believe you have a couple of questions.
So we have a couple of questions, and I think I would like to start with, what do you do in your creative process and practice time when you do not feel inspired? Sorry, when you do not feel inspired at all?
Well, it's a great question because I actually was just really dealing with that. I'm looking to do a new album, and I was kind of struggling with what to do and, you know, what to record. And I made a rule for myself that I walk a lot in New York. We walk a lot. I'm very busy too. So I decided that I have to listen to an album that I haven't heard yet once a day when I walk a lot. And I have to say that really quickly, within like 3 days of that, I came up with a new concept of what I wanted to record. Just because I was all of a sudden exposed to new music that I hadn't heard before or wasn't aware of.
Glenn, do you have any answers to contribute to this question?
Sure. Yeah, there are times that, and I apologize for the flipping the phone. There are times that I just kind of feel empty, and what I do is I have some calisthenic kinds of things that I do, And I just write it off to this day. I'm just going to do the basic stuff to keep it nimble. And usually when I start playing or start singing, when I actually start doing it, it goes. So I think the best way to combat it is just to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it seems like 5 minutes
Yeah.
and I'm doing it, I feel fine. And so I think it's the matter of just getting there and starting, you know, and having a discipline to do it all the time. Yeah.
That's actually a very good answer. I think I was just about to say that. So if I may just throw my answer quickly before I pass it on to Yala. I agree. And it is about just doing it. It's about routine. And it's, again, you know, something that scientists are talking about. It's not about you just waiting for motivation or inspiration to hit you. You actually start doing what is right. And so if you are starting doing something and it doesn't work for you, start something else. And practice gratitude, I think, is also kind of important. You know, something that, you know, you just go out there, get some fresh air, some light. So all those little things that we need to do in the morning, whether we like it or not, it's just like brushing your teeth. You just have to do it. You just have to do it. And you have to also strategically plan that inspiration. So you go out there to get inspired to write an album, for example, or you go out to get inspired to write a song, or you go out specifically to get inspiration to write a line or to practice. And you're thinking constantly about it. And if you feel like you are procrastinating and you are just kind of taking your time, I believe it's also a part of creative process. You have to let it happen. But as long as you're thinking about it, the right time will hit you. And sometimes, yes, it takes time for the flower to bloom. So that's my answer.
I decided years ago that I don't say the word practice anymore because the word practice gives me like twitches. And so I just call it singing. I'm going to sing a few songs, and I might sing 5 songs, and I might sing 10 songs, and I might choose one song and sing it 10 times, and I might choose, you know, so the minute there's pressure, like we put ourselves in pressure when we say, we have to practice, we have to do this, we have to do that, and it's building and building. And the minute you say, I'm just gonna sing some songs, and I think it's adding to what you guys were saying. Actually, it's leading me to another question. How do you deal with the music industry and the artist conditions that may take inspiration away because you're too worried to make your rent? That is a very, very big question.
I think coming from the previous answer that you've given to your previous question, leading to this one, I see only one word in both of those things. Is the paradigm. You know, what is your paradigm? If your belief system is that you're working for money, or you're working for something, for rent, you are becoming, like you say, maybe a slave of that kind of system, of that matrix, you know. But if you say, I actually do something that I love because I want to do it, and I'm going to be rewarded for that, and you take that reward and you don't cut yourself short, then slowly your paradigm can actually change, and things become different, you know. So they kind of unfold themselves in a completely different way, and you start seeing a different side of the same coin sometimes, you know. So everybody's different, and everybody has got their own triggers, and it's so, I feel, important to know yourself first. What makes you work, what makes you tick. For some people it is a trigger, for other people it's a reward. We have to just identify what works for us and just help ourselves to, you know, bring the best out in us. And this is what I believe, you know, student approach coaching is all about. It's so important to coach a person to find their own method. Sometimes I don't even give them my own method. I'm asking them what works for you first, and they're very, you know, bewildered and confused. I was like, what do you mean, you're a coach, you tell me what to do? I was like, please use your own brain.
Yeah,
And
try.
Yeah, so you know, so of course, you know, there are times when you just want to be told because you just want to have a certain guidance, but in the long run you have to learn to develop that creativity within yourself, and you have to obviously get help from others who can help you to become better, but not totally depend on them. So I guess my answer is that paradigm or healthy lifestyle ethics, healthy ethic choice, and just everything healthy is the answer to that. So that's my quick answer. Maybe now I can throw something in. Yeah.
We're in New York. It's expensive, and as musicians, we don't get paid as much as people in tech do in the city. And it's definitely, personally, has been one of my biggest struggles, balancing between wanting a quality of life that's nice and livable, and also really wanting to do my music. And I found that one of the hardest things is it's not even time. I mean, yes, I'm sleep deprived a lot of the times and stuff like that, but it's not even that. It's more like mental space. And in order to be inspired and be creative, there is need for some kind of quiet. I'm sure Yala as a mother can also relate in a different way. Or yeah, and I have I know it's all of these things and worries that that don't have to do with your craft, have a good way of coming in when you don't want them to. And it's a constant. I mean, I don't know if it helps to tell people that it's constantly an issue. I believe that balance is never, it's something that we always strive for, and it's very rare that we achieve it. And even when we do, it's for a very short amount of time. And I don't know, I think the best advice or answer is just that it's okay. And that sometimes there are times in life where it's very hard to find a place for inspiration because living and survival takes over, or your responsibilities. And as long as you're aware and you keep checking yourself, you can always find ways to adjust the balance in order to hopefully make it easier to find a quiet place, so that you can be inspired. What I said earlier, that exercise that I forced on myself was every time you walk anywhere, you're going to actively decide to listen to music, whether it's for a goal or not. Just do it. Because and be okay with it, that's the time that I have, and just be okay, which is the hardest part. I don't know how you can be okay, but I tell myself
it's very hard to find a quiet place to just think, connect. What is it do I believe in? Who do I believe in? Where is that faith? I'm a strong believer in setting up a goal and creating your own reality. And yes, it may take time, and it's not an easy road. And sometimes you will fall, and really hard. I believe personally, until you fall really hard and really bruise yourself, and until you won't pick yourself up, you won't actually see the light. I'm a strong believer in kind of constantly looking for a better adjustment, better way, better road, better country, better house. So I'm moving all the time in search of that, and I believe that my journey is actually going always level up. I'm finding that peace more and more. I'm closer every day. I'm closer one step more. And like you say, sometimes you're never satisfied because we're, ambitious. But at the same time, when I'm grateful, like you also said, when you're grateful, you say it's okay for now. Absolutely. I believe that as well. It's always okay not to be okay. Also, it's great to dream and look out for new ways to actually make this happen. So, yeah.
Glenn, you want to say something before
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't make a living, or I haven't yet, playing music, but I am very, I have some very close friends who are. And music's a tough business. There's just no two ways about it. And I think that there's a balance, because there's stuff that you do for yourself, and there's some really intricate or, complicated music things that I like, but not everybody else does. And there's songs that are really popular that I like, or that I don't particularly like, and everybody does. And I think that the key for anybody is to figure out where that balance is for who they are. And you're not sacrificing yourself completely, but there are times you've got to do things for the audience, the people who are paying tickets. It just depends on how much. and just getting back to the inspiration though is, I think about Billy Joel playing Piano Man, and how many times
That's a good one.
that tune. And
this is how he started, right?
Yeah,
it was like,
absolutely. So anyway, to me, it's about balance. Yeah.
That's such a good example. And Nama, you have a release tomorrow, right?
I do. It's the fourth single. It's the last standalone single that is going to be dropped from my new album. It's You Do Something to Me. It's a Cole Porter tune that I like a lot. Oh, actually, this one I am releasing with a label, which is awesome. The album that I did before, I ended up releasing by myself, and I, like everybody else, knew nothing about it. It actually gave me a lot of strength to feel like it was in my hands and I wasn't dependent on anyone to do it. I found a great platform online. It's called Band Builder Academy. It's run by an amazing person who, his name is Todd, and he used to work for Sony, and he knows more about the industry than anyone else. He has an approach that's a little more indie, which I think is really good for jazz musicians because the jazz world is very behind when it comes to how to actually utilize the streaming platforms to make some kind of money. It's just taught me so much. And I think regardless of if anyone's releasing by themselves or with a label, it is so valuable for jazz musicians or just artists in general to know how to do these things and what is required to, do the best out of, what we do have right now, which is like the streaming platforms. So it's called Band Builder Academy.
Are there any books you recommend to that talks about the inspirational process for artists? Do you have any specific exercises or practice? Well, we talked about practices and exercise to engage your own inspiration. You guys have any books in mind? The only book I can have in mind is picture books that we have of old jazz musicians, which I always love looking at. You can learn a lot by where they were, what they did. And there's a great book called 3 Wishes. If you can find it, I think it's kind of rare to find now, but they asked all jazz musicians if they had 3 wishes, what they would wish for. And it's really interesting to see their answers.
There's another book called The Artist Way. I have not yet read it, but I know a lot of people who have. It's an exercise book to actually, for creativity. It could be for any professional or artist, and it has a built-in exercises to, get you inspired to create.
Also, my favorite is Miss Peggy Lee by Miss Peggy Lee herself.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And guys, you won't believe it. I actually bought it in Edinburgh for just €1. And I didn't believe how much inspiration I got from there and how much I learned when I read how much she worked and how many songs she actually wrote without actually people knowing about them. Kind of made me think, I'm not even like 1% there. What am I doing with my life? So it really inspired me. I feel also, that inspiration is a great way against envy, like you either envy somebody and you just don't do anything, you just give up, or you actually get inspired and do something about it, even if it's like zillion, like 0.1%, it's still worth it. And Glenn, do you have any books to recommend?
2 of my favorite books, and one that I read recently was called The War of Art, and it's written by a guy named Pressfield, and he's a writer, but a lot of the stuff about inspiration and just having to gut through stuff and just do it that we talked about before. The second one, there's actually one more, is called Atomic Habits, and I think the guy's last name is Clear, James Clear. And I really like what he had to say. And the last one is Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner, and that's a book written by jazz musicians, but it also speaks to other aspects of life. So those 3 I particularly like.
Amazing, thank you guys so much. On SJI, we have so many inspirational teachers who would actually design the exercise or jazz voice exercise, especially for you to practice. And Glenn, thank you so much. Nama, thank you so much. Yala, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all. Thank you for organizing.
Thank you.
See you all soon.